the message.
To people with the emphasis on this middle name, it does indicate that at least some of those speakers are trying to sort of raise a question in some voters' minds.
I think that if you're going to play the race card on one side, I think you have to remember that it's a two-sided game. So, I mean,
A two-sided game in what way?
Well, if we're going to weigh race, we need to weigh it in both sections, you know, the black and white.
I disagree because I think that that it's not really the same thing for for a black person who has gone through racism, which is absolutely still around, to feel excited about the chance that Obama might be in the White House.
So are you saying it's okay for black people to use race as a way to judge candidates, but not okay for white people to?
I wouldn't put it that way, but I think that that's different from a white candidate or white folks wanting to make sure that only white people or predominantly white people remain in those positions of power.
So those voters saw Tom Foreman, Joe Johns join me, along with CNN political analyst and radio talk show host Roland Martin, and CNN Soledad O'Brien. So, people talk so much about the Bradley effect. There may be some evidence that doesn't apply anymore, even if it applied back then.
Some of the pollsters we spoke to, especially when we were in Columbus doing those panels of our undecided voters, they said one of the things that they have seen recently is people don't lie to pollsters of different colors. It used to be, back in the time factoring the Bradley effect, that they would give one answer to a black pollster and one answer to a white pollster. Their answer will change. And they actually have said, now when they test for that, the answer doesn't change, which in this particular pollster's mind was an indication he thought that the Bradley effect would be non-existent this time around. I think most people said, we've got to kind of wait and see.
Roland, do you think Americans from different backgrounds hear the same messages differently?
Oh, absolutely. There's no doubt. I was on a panel today for Edwards Magazine for the Women's Leadership Summit, and we talked about culture when African Americans hear Walmart mom, soccer mom, or they hear Joe Sixpack. They hear that differently than whites do. There's no doubt. Look, let's just be honest. You look at the top 10 shows in black households, they're different than the top 10 shows in white households. And so there's no doubt that people hear things differently. Granted, this new generation, Generation X and Generation Y, has played a great role in terms of breaking down some of those barriers, but they still aren't there in terms of how we do things differently.
Tom, what did the people you talked to say about that? Well, Anderson, this question of code words, I guess code only works if everybody's in on the code. And one of the things I was struck by is that it seems like there are perhaps more African-American voters who are aware of these code words or sensitive to them than white voters. Now, maybe that just means white voters instinctively know it and they know they're being spoken to, but there was more of a puzzlement, I think, among white voters of saying, what code? They get some code.
If you look back historically, there was a time when it was very clear. Colors cannot use this water fountain, right? This is not the one. You can be very clear. Nowadays, people will say things like, "You're not a good fit for this company. We don't know that you're going to mix with." Those are all code words, and I think you're right. Minorities are very sensitive to because they understand no colors is not going to be the sign anymore.
But Soledad, they'll say the same thing about a worker who's too old these days, or a worker who simply has a different viewpoint from the rest of the workplace. That doesn't mean it doesn't apply on racial lines, but it applies on a lot of other lines.
Joe and I just, because we haven't heard from Joe, the group you heard from, what did they say?
They jumped in on the issue of code, but I got to say that we talked for 20 full minutes before anybody even brought up the issue of race. But when I first heard the word race, it had to do with code. A question of something Sarah Palin had said, about soccer moms and so on. One of the panelists said, that's code. That's code for saying the Barack Obama and others are not like us.
Anderson, it was interesting, and I talked to one of my colleagues at the Fort Worth Telegram several years ago who was white. We were discussing this whole issue, and I asked him, I said, got a question. When you walk into a room, banquet or whatever, and it's all white, I said, do you notice that it's all the same? He said, well, no, not really. I said, well, if you're in a room that's all black, you pick up real quick that you're the only white guy in the room. He said, yeah. I said, well, as an African-American, I am...